It's just a summary in 7 minutes. Hear that?
Got it.
To view this magnificent skyline and give thanks for the Almighty for keeping the winds on the bay and the sun shining. So to the Reverend Fathers who are here, ministers, esteemed members of the Christian clergy, together with my rabbinic colleagues, with thanks to the Almighty, with thanks to Hashem, we gather today, Christians and Jews, in this magnificent rooftop sukkah built by the Schechter family to celebrate the festival of Sukkot. I do not have to tell you these recent months, recent years have not been easy for the Jewish people here in Australia. Across the world we have witnessed a disturbing resurgence of anti-Semitism, not only hateful words and graffiti, but vandalism, arson, physical attacks, the burning down of synagogues and the terrible loss of life recently on the holiest day of the year in Manchester in England. Yet, when I look around here today in this sukkah, I see hope. I see faith. I see solidarity. I see a light that is strong enough to drive away the darkness of this hate. And I say to you today, on behalf of truly the whole Jewish community, we thank you. We thank you. And so, my friends, I close with the words of the prophet Zechariah, who envisioned a time when all nations of the world shall go up year after year to worship the Lord and celebrate the festival of the tabernacles. What a vision. Nations distinct yet united, peoples different yet gathered in joy before one Creator.
The prayer may answer all of our prayers, and certainly today for the world at large. I think everyone's praying to God that all the news we've heard today will come true, and we'll be able to celebrate the return of all those who have been held captive for over 2 years now. David Adonai Ori v'yishi mimi ira Adonai Moz mimi evchad.
I hope to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Put your hope in the Lord. Be strong and courageous. Yes, put your hope in the Lord.
I must share with you, the last time Pastor Dale and I were together was October the 7th last year in Canberra. We were actually the last two speakers after 2 hours, and the organiser came up and said, look guys, there have been too many speakers, we're going to have to cut one of you. So he kindly said, we'll both go up or not at all, and there we stood. I think that was the best stance against anti-Semitism, and the pastor and a rabbi speaking together.
But we stand with you, not only because it's good for Australia, it is good for Australia for us to stand with you. Not only it's good for the Christian community to stand with you, but we stand with you because of our sincere affection and alignment. We love you, and I say that with the genuine warmth of my heart. My wife and I spent the first year of our married life in Israel, and so it's just a delight to stand with you in such an important time to stand together. I trust that this little yellow badge, yellow ribbon for the sake of the hostages, I no longer need to wear after Sunday. So may that be so.
But it is this spiritual idea of all of us being able to gather in a small space and feel the warmth, feel the joy, feel the protection. Every evening in the Jewish community we recite a prayer. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. We turn to the Almighty and we say, spread over us your canopy of peace, your sukkah, sukat shlomecha, your sukkah of peace, of protection. It's an inclusive canopy. It's not one that is built of rocks. It's not a fortress. It's a canopy of warmth. It's a canopy of protection. It is a canopy of peace. And that is the sukkah in which we're standing in today. And if I just take a moment to the other symbol of Sukkot, look like our eyes, vision of good. You look at the leaves of the willow that very much look like lips, where we speak good, where we speak in peace. And this beautiful etrog is the heart of compassion. And we take that, and we take those 4 items and we put them all together and we say, this is who we are, regardless what we look like, regardless of what faith we practice. We tie ourselves together and we pray for Ufros Aleinu Sukkot Shlomecha. May God indeed cover us, shelter us, protect us with his canopy of peace. Ken Yehi Ratzon, so may it be here in this sukkah, and so may it be all over the world.
As a wise rabbi once told me, it only takes one candle to light up the darkness. He said, be a candle. Thank you, Rabbi Isaac. Thank you too for gathering us today, Jews and Christians together. As together we symbolize the hope that we share for the future harmony, unity, justice, and peace of all humankind in the kingdom of God.
We can overcome fear. We can overcome hatred. We can overcome despair. And that is the message of Sukkot, not just for the Jewish people, but I think it's a message for all people. Through our faith, through our hope, through our togetherness. That is how we do it. So, smile, be happy. You're here today for Sukkot.
In my business, running tours, we always say you're on a journey, and hopefully by coming out today, the journey of befriending, of supporting and being with members of the Jewish community will continue. Reach out, and long may we be able to do functions and gatherings like this.
I think here today in Balaclava, on this rooftop sukkah, Christians and Jews have taken a step towards this promised future.
Now, just for everyone's news, that the 31st of October coming up is becoming famous for the wrong reasons with Halloween, but something more significant happened on the 31st of October in 1917, which most of you would know about. So that was the charge at Beersheba, a great victory for the Australian soldiers run by the Australian General Harry Chabelle under General Allenby. And so following that time, a bunch of us decided to make a bit of noise about the Australian character, the Anzac character. And so we formed this group called Beersheba Vision, which I've been part of since Peter Kentley was around after that 2017 trip to Israel, to Jerusalem and Beersheba, as so many of us did. So out of that, Barry Rogers is the president of this group, and I don't know if Barry's on yet tonight. He's running an amazing off-the-grid training ground place up in northern New South Wales for youth to find themselves, and using Anzac principles in many cases of, just the perseverance and the courage. Courage is the first word that's significant for this group, because it's without courage you can't do anything. So taking that first step is important. So Barry just talks a little bit here for a bit of an overview of what happened in Israel in 2017 for the centenary, and we'll just roll into that now. No, that's the previous one. We'll get that out of there. Stop sharing that one, resharing this one.
No, wrong one.
Yeah, I can't see it. It's already open somewhere. It might be this one. There we go.
Here we go.
Good.
2017 marked the centenary of the famous charge on Beersheba by the Australian Light Horse on October the 31st, 1917. And this military victory, combined with the amazing Balfour Declaration that was actually declared in the Cabinet on the same day at about the same time that the charge took place. These two events changed the whole course of the war in the Middle East and, in its geopolitical outcomes, changed the whole course of history. Prime Minister Netanyahu made the famous comment that this victory by the Australians in 1917 opened the doorway for the Jewish nation to re-enter the stage of history.
Sons and daughters of Abraham, and open the gateway for the Jewish people to re-enter the stage of history. The heroism of your fallen men will never be forgotten. The brave soldiers who are buried here played a crucial role in defeating the Ottoman Empire, liberating the Holy Land, ending 400 years of Ottoman rule in one great dash. There's a historical significance of what happened here. Anzac soldiers went on to capture Jerusalem, Tiberias, Megiddo, and then continued northwards. They were actually retracing the footsteps of the heroes of the Bible. They were stepping on the verses of the Bible, and they knew it.
Beersheba Vision began some years ago by the late Peter Kentley, a former airline pilot, under the patronage of his friend, the late Tim Fisher, AC, and Deputy Prime Minister. Peter was fascinated by the charge and its geopolitical outcomes, and was determined to keep the legacy of that famous charge alive.
Today we honour our forebears as we reignite, and boy does Australia need it, the Anzac spirit expressed in the four words of courage, endurance, mateship and sacrifice.
Peter was a member of the Australian Light Horse Association and a participant in that huge commemoration ceremony in 2017, attended by the Prime Ministers of both Australia and Israel.
We're here assembled because we are honouring an extraordinary battle which made history, which fulfilled history. A tale of incredible courage, of men and horses.
And I guess the highlight of that event was the ride through the Negev desert, following in the same steps as the original Light Horse 100 years earlier, and the reenactment of the charge, and the tremendous ride through the city of Beersheba that was attended by tens of thousands of cheering Israelis. It was a sight never to be forgotten. After the passing of Peter Kentley, I had the great privilege of being nominated to assume the role of President of Beersheba Vision. Neville Clark, a Vietnam veteran who won the Military Cross in Vietnam and also an Order of Australia, together with Indigenous leader Peter Walker, the patrons of Beersheba Vision. Another important mission of Beersheba Vision is to stand with our Jewish brethren and Israel against the insidious rise of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is rearing its ugly head around the world as never before, and Beersheba Vision stands resolutely against that threat. Beersheba Vision is about honouring the legacy of the Australian Light Horse and standing with the modern state of Israel and reaching out to the Jewish community. Good afternoon, everybody. Great to have your company for another program of Beersheba Vision, and we've got a great lineup for you this afternoon.
but I'm going to pass to you to share what you've got to share with us tonight. So welcome.
And above all, fighting for the freedoms and values that our Anzacs paid so dearly for. If you identify with this cause, why don't you consider enlisting as a member in Beersheba Vision so that you can join forces with us in this struggle to uphold the right and to repay the debt we owe. Feel free to visit our website, beershebavision.org, and we'll be delighted to hear from you. We have a range of resources that are helpful, and also attractive merchandise with some wonderful pictures from those famous light horse artists, the Marshalls, on a variety of gift items that you might like to browse and have a look at. Well, thank you. Please feel free to visit our website.
Here we are.
Okay, so welcome everybody to our October Southern Cross Alliance for Israel. Didn't know my photo was going to be up in the Beersheba Vision interviews with Barry. But it's great to have you with us once again. I think this is our 7th year of running Southern Cross Alliance for Israel and standing with our Jewish friends and Christian friends, who you will meet a couple of our special guests tonight who we walk with and support with. So it's wonderful to have you here. And we have people from the north of Australia to the south of Australia, where I am at the bottom of Tasmania, right down in a place called Garden Island Creek, right at the southern tip of Tasmania, right through to up in Cairns and further, and across to our friends in New Zealand. And it's just wonderful to have you with us. The photo I have behind me is at the front of the Knesset, for which many of you would have been there, in the garden right in the front of the Knesset, where the Israeli flag stands with the Australian flag, etc. It's been a very big month, as always, with things happening in Israel. And I'm not going to go into too many of those things unless we have time for, but it's really special to have Suzie Smeed with us and Annetay Henderson, and we're going to introduce them in just a moment. Apologies from our Rabbi Riesenberg, who is on his way to New York for a big Jewish gathering of rabbis from all around the world. So he's in an aeroplane tonight. And some of our other partners are in aeroplanes as well. So Ian Warby and his wife Mandy are on their way to Israel. Matt Chivers and his wife are coming back from Israel, from Bridges for Peace. It's good to see we've got our ICEJ partners with us. I can see Sarah there and a few of the others, etc., and Mark. So we're, for those who haven't been with us beforehand, we're a group of Christians and Jewish organisations who came together to originally start with Nations Blessing Israel. And we've morphed into the Southern Cross Alliance for Israel once COVID came, and running monthly events on Zoom and running events all around the country. And in particular, over the last 3 years since we've been let free, with our travelling with our Israeli ambassador, Amir Mammon, all around the country to do live events in both synagogues and Christian churches to introduce each other to what we are, who we stand for, and why we do that, etc. So as chair of that organisation, I welcome you all. And out of Southern Cross Alliance of Israel, we have recently formed the Israel Allies Foundation, which is in the process of going through its tax deductibility status so that we can actually raise some money and help people like Suzie and Annetay in spreading the word, particularly into our primary and secondary educational people, which you're going to hear more about tonight. So, David, did we have another little thing we had to play before we started?
Yes, because we don't have the rabbi live, I can play the 10-minute introduction he did to that night on the rooftop, because he's really pleased with what he said and he's on the ball with it. So we can run that next if you like.
Go for that now.
Okay. So. That's it. Get rid of that.
Thanks to Hashem, we gather today, Christians and Jews, on this magnificent rooftop sukkah built by the Schechter family to celebrate the festival of Sukkot. Henry, the father of the family, unfortunately is not well, and we wish him a speedy recovery, but I welcome Jonty has joined us. But I do wish to say it as a family, the family is one who's deeply committed to traditions, to values, and to ethics, but they also understand that it's important to share those blessings that God has bestowed upon them. And that is why they have given this space, this sukkah, and the foyer. They've made this available for community use. Truth be told, when Jonty completed this building last year, I suggested to build a sukkah on this rooftop. And he looked at me and says, "Who's going to come?" I said, "Build it, and they will come." Now, in my mind, I thought that our first function, we would have hundreds of Jews. Providence had it. Today, the sukkah is filled with hundreds of Christians filling the sukkah with light, with faith, and with joy. There's a wonderful Yiddish saying, "A Mensch tracht und Gott lacht." Man plans, but God laughs. In other words, we make plans, but ultimately the story is written by God. I do not have to tell you these recent months, recent years have not been easy for the Jewish people here in Australia. Across the world, we've witnessed a disturbing resurgence of anti-Semitism, not only hateful words and graffiti, but vandalism, arson, physical attacks, the burning down of synagogues, and the terrible loss of life recently on the holiest day of the year in Manchester, in England. Yet, when I look around here today in this sukkah, I see hope. I see faith. I see solidarity. I see a light that is strong enough to drive away the darkness of this hate. And I say to you today, on behalf of truly the whole Jewish community, we thank you. We thank you. But your support has not just been symbolic. It's been real. And I say not only today, but repeatedly over these past 2 years. I have seen it, as many here today. And if I just may share with you one or two examples. In our synagogue, Central Shul, of which Rabbi Shmuel is the rabbi, and we welcome President Phil Goldman. November 2023, in the middle of the Friday night service, we had to evacuate the synagogue because an anti-Israeli, anti-Zionist, anti-Semitic mob was heading towards the park across the road from the synagogue, and they remained there for the next 3 hours chanting the most horrific things. The following week we decided to make a unity Shabbat. We invited many of our local synagogues. But a friend, a colleague, he should be here today, Pastor Michael of the Frankston Life Church, asked, "May I come and join you on this special unity Shabbat?" And I said, of course. Not only did he come, he brought many members of the congregation and he spoke there from the rabbi's pulpit. December 2024, when the Adass synagogue was burnt to the ground, Reverend Jonathan Chamberlain, who's here with us today, asked Stephen Green, who coordinated this event, "Please take me there. I want to see it." And he took him there that afternoon. And Jonathan stood there amongst the ashes of the burnt synagogue and wept at what had occurred. But his tears became action because he had organized that local Anglican churches come to Central Shul for a Shabbat service and a meal of solidarity. And from that event, in subsequent weeks, Father Ian Morrison, who is here, Ian, of the St Andrew's Church in Brighton, boldly placed upon the church notice board there in the heart of Brighton, "Anti-Semitism is wrong. Let the Jews of Australia live in peace." And to my dear friend Pastor Dale, who has brought his congregation on 2 occasions to strengthen our bonds of friendship and faith and show solidarity with us in these trying times. The words of Pastor Martin Niemöller, who lived during that tragic era of the Nazis rising to power, famously said, "First they came for the socialists and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. So then they came for the Jews and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me. And there was no one left to speak for me." But you, my friends, have not been silent. You have spoken. You have acted. You have stood with us, and for that we are grateful. And let me add, your presence here today is not just about standing against anti-Semitism, and not just an issue of religious freedom. Is it also not about the faith that we share? Are we not bound to buy those great words in Genesis? In the beginning, God created man, a reminder that every human being is created b'tselem Elokim, in the image of God. Are we not bound together by that divine moral code given at Sinai, a call to faith, to justice and to righteousness? A creed that has been the bedrock of Western civilization. And are we not bound together by a vision of the prophet Isaiah, who calls for a day when nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn of war anymore. It's a dream of peace that belongs to all of us, and yes, I know you believe he's going to come for a second time, and we believe he's only going to come for the first time, and yes, we believe he's going to have a long white beard, and I think you think he's going to have long hair, but we both await that day when the knowledge of God shall cover the earth as the water covers the sea. And I'll leave you today with a wonderful story of Jonathan Sacks, who tells soon after he got married, he had to build his first sukkah. And Rabbi Sacks was not known for his carpentry and was grateful when a colleague offered him a lift to the hardware store. His colleague knew exactly what he wanted to buy, subsequently built a magnificent sukkah, strong, symmetrical, perfectly measured. Rabbi Sacks, on the other hand, built a small, crooked little hut, held together by bits of plywood and rope. A few days into the festival, an almighty storm swept through the town. The next morning, Rabbi Sachs met his colleague who said to him, "I imagine your sukkah has collapsed, as mine has." And Rabbi Sachs said, "No, not at all. My sukkah is still standing." And he said, "It cannot be. It cannot be." His colleague came to see, and Rabbi Sachs' ramshackle hut sukkah was there standing. But then he noticed one thing. Rabbi Sachs had tied his sukkah with a single rope, fastened firmly to a nail on the wall of his house. And his colleague smiled and said, "That is the secret. However fragile we are, we must tie ourselves to something higher, to something stronger and something greater than ourselves." And Rabbi Sachs added, "That nail is faith." That nail is faith. It is a shared faith, our Judeo-Christian values which unite us here today. And so, my friends, I close with the words of the prophet Zechariah, who envisioned a time when all nations of the world shall go up year after year to worship the Lord and celebrate the festival of the tabernacles. What a vision. Nations distinct yet united, peoples different yet gathered in joy before one Creator. I think here today in Balaclava, on this rooftop sukkah, Christians and Jews have taken a step towards this promised future. Chag Sameach, and may this festival be blessed with joy, with faith and peace.
Wonderful. Stop sharing. Wonderful. We love our rabbi, and we're so happy that he could be with us, even though he's not with us. In inverted commas, he's flying to New York. Well, it's with great pleasure. I just want to introduce one of our original committee members of SCAFI, Stephen Green, who you would have seen a bit of in that film. And Stephen and I were privileged enough to be invited to the mayoral conference against anti-Semitism on the Gold Coast, 6 weeks ago, whenever it was. And we were actually privileged to be there and introduce the Israel Allies Foundation and SCAFI to a number of people. There were over 70 speakers, I think, in the 3 days we were there, but one person really stood apart. Stephen, introduce her.
Thank you very much. Hopefully you can hear me loud and clear, everyone.
All good.
I've escaped the school prize giving and I'm in the car park or in the foyer. It's not about me, though. I wanted to confirm what you said, John. In fact, Suzie Smeed stole the show at the Combat Anti-Semitism Summit. What an inspiration. What a breath of fresh air. We could all listen to Suzie every day. And I feel, and as Suzie said herself, it's an privilege while she is with us and shares her life story with us. We should listen to every word she has to say. Some incredible messages through her tragic experience, but her lived experience being in Australia now. And we understand just coming back from Israel at the very moment in those days that the living hostages were returned. So Suzie, we know you live on the beautiful Sunshine Coast, and you were born in Hungary. Well, you'll tell us more. You're an octogenarian, I think that's the word for it. But you're an inspiration, and we love you, and we're so pleased that you agreed to share your story with everyone tonight. We know also you're not feeling 100%, so thank you for battling on, and over to you. Please unmute and share your story. I think David had your slide up as well to want to show everyone.
Have I unmuted?
Yes, you're good.
Yes, you're good.
Well done, Suzie.
Right.
Just sharing your photo of the Holocaust survivor and your story, you know, which some of us have read already, from a 12-year-old girl in a mother's arms during that time period.
No,
So
2-year-old.
yeah, two-year-old, not a 12-year-old. Okay, over to you. Share your story.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I just want to thank our Christian friends who have had the courage to support the Australian Jewish community at this rather extraordinary and horrible time that we're experienced since the Holocaust. And so I'll tell you about my life as a Holocaust survivor. In May 1944, my mother was carrying me in her arms, wearing a star like this on her coat, and her parents, my grandparents, were walking behind her. And we were walking over cobble streets in a little country town called Papa in Hungary, near the Austrian border. And the streets were full of people, former friends and neighbours who were cheering and clapping, but they weren't clapping and cheering a holiday. What they were doing, they were cheering 3,500 Hungarian Jews, their former friends and neighbours, and we were being marched into a ghetto flanked by Hungarian gendarmes and Nazi SS officers. And the ghetto we were being marched into comprised of only 4 small blocks. And we were held there awaiting our fate. And within a few days actually, the entire ghetto, the 3,500 Jews, and that included 670 children, were herded onto cattle trucks on a 3-day journey to Auschwitz with almost no food and water. And the majority went straight to the gas chambers. And that included my grandparents. Very fortunately, my mother and I were smuggled out of the ghetto, and that happened. A very good Christian friend, a lay preacher, bribed the guards at one end of the ghetto. And again, this was a great cost to his life because he could have also been rounded up. And he paid the guards to get our whole family out of the ghetto. However, when we got to the door, the guards panicked because there were 4 of us. So they said, no, we can only let the mother and child out. We can't let the parents of my mother out. And can you imagine, my mother, she didn't want to leave her parents behind, but they insisted. They said they'd lived their life, and she was a young mother with a young child. She had to go. And I think my mother, she never got over it, and I think she died very young because of the grief that she carried all her life. So we were very fortunate, my mother and I. We were driven up to Budapest. In the meantime, my father, who'd been in a labour camp, had also escaped. And again, we were hidden by a very good Christian friend who'd worked with Dad, and he put us up in his mother's apartment, which was above his apartment. And we stayed there for some months, and he would come up, and we had to be very quiet. I don't know how my parents kept me quiet, but we had to be quiet, and he would come up and bring us food at night and tell us what was going on with the war as the Russians were progressing towards Hungary. And then as the Nazis, the German Nazis were retreating, the Hungarian Arrow Cross, which were a very virulent and anti-Semitic group, started going through apartments to try and find any Jews that were still living in Budapest. And someone mentioned that they'd heard a noise in this apartment, so we thought we were going to be discovered and we had to get out. And so this friend, George, at night took us through the street so we didn't run into any of the Holocaust patrols. And we went back to our own apartment hoping it was still intact. And when my parents got there, they found their Christian maids. There was a maid and a daughter who had been looking after our apartment. And they were there. And so they went out into the city and they brought my parents back half a box of apples and some salami. And my parents thought they would hide in the ceiling space above the bathroom where they kept the luggage. So till the Russians came. And it was getting very cold. It was late October. It was starting to snow. So my parents went up into this space to hide. But of course, they were very concerned about me as I was just over 2 years old. They didn't know how long they would have to stay hidden. So they asked the maid and the daughter to take some of the family possessions and take me to their village away from the bombing. So my parents stayed hidden up in this space for about 6 weeks, I believe. And I remember Dad telling the story that he would go out on the ledge at night, take snow off the ledge so they'd water. Sometimes at night they'd come out. And then finally, when the Russian siege finished and Budapest was liberated and my parents could come out of hiding, and a little while later the maids came back. And they came back without me. And they were very upset, and they told my parents that they couldn't get to their village, but they'd gone to a little town called Miskolc, and there was an orphanage there, so they left me there for safekeeping. So you can imagine my parents, as soon as they could and things were safe, they set out on foot in the cold, half frozen. And on the third day, they were sitting on a train, and it was almost by miracle. There was a lady sitting opposite, and she said, "What are you Jews doing here?" I thought there weren't any left, and my mother started to cry. And she said, "We're going to Miskolc to try and find my little red-headed Zhuzhika who's been left in an orphanage." And the lady got very excited, and she said, "I come from there, I know that orphanage, and that orphanage was bombed. And did your little red-headed Zhuzhika have a jumper with her name embroidered on her jumper?" And my mother said, "That's right, that's how I sent her away." And the lady said, "Oh, I know someone that took in a little child like that in my village." Can you believe this story? And so my parents were very excited. It wasn't quite that easy to find me because apparently I'd been passed around to 7 different families, and they finally located me. I was hidden in a barn by a lovely country peasant lady. She had me sleeping in the trough with the animals, and the story goes that when Mum and Dad found me, I'd almost no hair left. I was covered in sores, but you can imagine how happy we were to find each other. So my parents looked after this lovely farm lady till we left Hungary, who we named Aunt Yulishka. And of course, Dad wanted to leave Hungary straight away, but Mum was desperately hoping that her parents had survived the Holocaust and that one day they would return. So Dad started up his textile business again. And it was not till 1947 that someone came to my mother and told her that they'd witnessed her parents going to the gas chambers. So then there was nothing to keep my parents in Hungary. So Dad put in an application to immigrate to America, and he was called into the ministry, and they said to him, "Oh, Les, we'd like you to represent Hungary," but was now all a communist government. And they said to Dad, "Oh, but you must leave your wife and child behind." And of course, can you imagine? Dad was not prepared to do that, and he knew his days were numbered. So he made inquiries about how to get us out of Hungary very quickly, and he found a young Russian soldier who was delivering mail between Budapest and Vienna and doing some people smuggling. And within a very few days, someone came to Dad and said, look, Les, you've got to go. I've seen a warrant out for your arrest. So one night we met this young Russian soldier with just a very small bag. I was allowed a doll, which I can still remember. And we were laid out on the floor of this van with two other couples, and sacks of mail were put over us. And we set out for Vienna. And I remember that night very vividly. You know, I was 6 years old, and I remember we pulled up at the border, and my mother had a scarf over my mouth so I wouldn't cry out. My father was holding on very tightly to me, and the driver was joking with the border guards, so they wouldn't come and search the truck. And we fortunately made it to Vienna. And I say fortunately because we heard a few weeks later that the truck was stopped and everybody, including the driver, was shot. So we got to Vienna with almost nothing, and had a niece here in Australia who very kindly sent us some money. So we boarded a converted cargo ship from Genoa on you know, one of those ships where there was, my mother and I shared a cabin with 6 ladies, and Dad shared a cabin with 6 men, and wasn't one of these wonderful cruise ships. Anyway, we got to Australia. Unfortunately, the niece had died while we were on the high seas. We arrived here with, Dad had £9 in his pocket, no English. We had, the Jewish board helped us. We were billeted at the back of someone's house. They got Mum and Dad jobs in factories. The first thing my father did was go to night school, and in those days you didn't want to have an accent, so they said to the teacher, how do I stop the child from having the Hungarian accent, you know, darling? So they said you must never speak English to the child, so we never spoke English at home. And I spoke Hungarian till my parents died. So then during the war, my parents converted to Catholicism, hoping that that would save them from persecution, as many Jews did, which of course it didn't help. But so when we arrived in Australia, someone suggested, my parents wanted me to have a good education. And so they approached the Catholic Church, who very kindly offered to send me and pay for my schooling at a boarding school till my parents got on their feet. So at age 7, I was sent out to Maitland, which is a little country town past Newcastle. And I have to tell you, it was one of the, from memory, a very difficult time of my life. I was the first bloody refo. I had no English, but I'm eternally grateful to the Catholic Church for giving me a wonderful opportunity and giving me a great education. So we lived our life. And then when my father died and I was turning 60, I decided to return to Hungary to do a little research on my family history. And one of the things I did, I went down to Papua, where I'd been rounded up with my mother and grandparents. And we heard of an old Jewish gentleman who'd managed to retrieve all the original lists of all the Jews in Papua that had been put into the ghetto. And so I knocked on the door and told him I was looking for the address of my grandparents, and he very kindly brought out this list. And I must say it was the word, it really struck me to see my name and my mother's name and my grandparents' name on a list. That's our names there. And that's really my death sentence, to be sent to the gas chamber. And very fortunately, these documents are now housed at Yad Vashem, and that's where I got the copy from. And the other thing I found out while I was doing research on the Hungarian Holocaust. And this is just almost incomprehensible that in 56 days, 437,000 Jews were put on cattle trucks, sent to Auschwitz and to the gas chambers. And Winston Churchill said that this was the greatest crime ever committed in the history of the world. So then I grew up. I started in my older age. I started going to schools to talk about my experiences with a group called Courage to Care, and as a Holocaust survivor. And then in 2023, April, I published my book called The Courage to Care. And then on October the 7th, it was like almost the whole thing almost started again. I could not believe what happened in Israel and what happened in the rest of the world, and particularly what happened here in Australia, my beloved country. I could not believe what happened at the Opera House, and at that critical moment demanded the strength to confront and crush the intimidation that was unfortunately missed, and the police failed to take strong physical response to the bullying and insightful, intimidating mob behaviour. And excuse me, but I've written some notes, so I'm going to read them to you. And had the government and police acted as they should have done, I'm confident that the repetition of the obviously pre-planned anti-Semitic demonstrations we have seen since October 9 would not have happened. But the bullies had their way, and the situation has only got worse, and the Australian Jews have since increasingly been humiliated, threatened and insulted, and the Labor government, through their failed leadership, have implicitly blessed intimidating mobs, marches, and these are reminiscent of Berlin in the 1930s, and by calling them peaceful demonstrations. And we know where that led to, don't we? And for the first time since I was welcomed here in 1949, I feel unsafe and uncertain about the future when we see so many self-confessed do-gooders and Pontius Pilate politicians and ignorant celebrities, and particularly leftist academics, lining up, showing their support for tolerance of the unforgivable Muslim 8th century behaviour. And the harsh facts are clear, and we must have the courage to present them to the Australian public. And I'd like to draw your attention to the absurdity of the propaganda to which the Australian public have been exposed. We have had Israel being repeatedly, invalidly accused of being the evil aggressor and coloniser, while in fact being the only Middle East liberal democracy of 9 million people. And you know what it's like in there. They're a mixed race, to mixed religion, mixed gender, for want of a better word. You know, Israel is just the most wonderful, all-encompassing country, and it's surrounded by 22 Muslim countries, 70 times the area of Israel, and 55 times more people than that of Israel. And remember, Israel reduced its defences in unsuccessfully attempting to apply appeasement to achieve peace. When they threw the Jews out of Gaza and gave it back to the Palestinians. And the toxicity of the false anti-Semitic propaganda appears to have been completely missed by groups and organisations who claim honesty and good intentions in addressing the Gaza crisis and then do the reverse. And in context, I must say, I felt we have not taken the fight to the outrageous anti-Semitism of Penny Wong, Anthony Albanese and Tony Burke. And I feel so strongly and passionate about this. And I've just returned from Israel. I've just had the most amazing time there. I've been around to all the borders. I've been right up to the Lebanese border, the Syrian border, the Jordanian border, up to Samaria. Israel is this tiny country, but it's done so much. I mean, it's half the size of Tasmania, and yet it is so productive. I've seen orchards, hothouses, vineyards growing in the Negev desert. It is just amazing. And I did almost the 70 kilometres of the October 7th invasion. I did not realise how big the area was when Hamas invaded Israel. And there were 3 waves that came through. And I saw the 1,460 odd cars that were burnt, with people burnt in them, where forensic doctors had to go and find the bodies and find out who they were. I saw an ambulance where 16 people had been burnt alive. I went to a bunker where 14 people were blown up. It was just terrifying. But in saying that, I happened to be at the Nova site. I was watching a family praying in front of a picture of one of their beautiful daughters, obviously, that had died there. And as I was standing there, a helicopter flew over with the released hostages. It was just the most amazing time to be in Israel. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope you'll agree that it's important for Australia as a truly liberal, democratic, Judeo-Christian culture based on Western society to support Israel's destruction of Hamas and contribute to the survival and success of the sole democratic country in the Middle East. Because, as you've heard before, as Bob Hawke declared in 1974, if the bell tolls for Israel, it tolls for the whole of mankind, and Israel is just the canary in the coal mine.
Yeah.
And that's why, as I say, in my later life, I started visiting schools and community organisations around Queensland to educate people, and particularly the young, about the horrors of the Holocaust. That's why I wrote the book, to hold a light to the darkness that prevails when good people turned a blind eye to bad things. And all good Australians must have the courage to fight the onslaught of anti-Semitism. And the message I leave with you, and I leave with students. The Holocaust was a product of anti-Semitism, but it did not start with the horrors of Auschwitz and the gas chambers. It started with words, slogans, and demonstrations like we see today in the streets of our city. So never forget, never again.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Suzie, thank you. Never again is now. And your passion is unbelievable. Your voice is so important. We are so privileged to hear your words, your story, your testimony. May I encourage everyone to get a copy of the Courage to Care book through online, through where else can we get the book? At the...
Well, you get it on Amazon and
Amazon.
Amazon and Concord are selling my book. Yeah, but it talks about my whole life right up till the time my book was published. My adult life and my marriages and all the good things and bad things in my life, as well as my life as a survivor.
Yeah. Now, Suzie, your message to all of us is so important. Reach out to friends, tell them the story, the truth, and let's make sure, these ugly, hate-filled rallies where it starts don't get any more momentum.
Yeah,
that's right.
And those that were also at the Never Again Is Now rallies on the weekend, would have felt the love and friendship and
Mark Leach is a wonderful man.
Yeah. So that's what we've got to do to get out there and spread more love and kindness and truth. But thank you, Suzie, to you and to John, your amazing Methodist Zionist husband. Please stay healthy, stay well, and may you be able to continue sharing your message.
Thank you for so much for having me, and thank you for all the wonderful work you do. And I've got to say, can I say a few more words?
Depends on the next speaker, but
sorry. Just that I've been to Beersheba, and it is wonderful.
It's wonderful. Thank you, Suzie. I think we may have you back on at some stage to hear other parts of your journey. So we'll be in touch. We're just so privileged to have you with us.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for listening to my story.
Yeah. Well, the other interesting, our second guest, Annetay, is sort of CEO manager of the Holocaust Museum that's being rebuilt in Adelaide, and that Suzie's speaking at and educating at the Holocaust Museum, I think in Brisbane. Is it, Suzie, that you go up?
That's correct. Yes, I speak there sometimes. Yeah.
So we really need the education process for our primary and secondary school kids to understand the truth as against what they get fed in the media and from the left wing. And so we are 100% behind you, Suzie, and what you are saying. So we need the rest of the Christian world to get on board and to stand with our brothers and sisters. But it's with that I introduce Annetay. I met 3 or 4 months ago. We did a joint event with ICEJ and Israel I in Adelaide, organised by Mark Woodry, and Annetay was there at the museum, and they were about 3/4 way through the renovation. It was just fascinating, and then we caught up again in Melbourne a couple of months after that, as she came across, and the work that they are doing with the Yad Vashem Museum is just wonderful. And what I'm really interested in is the ongoing process of education that we all need to get on board. So Annetay, please unmute and share part of your story.
Well, thank you so much, John, and thank you to SCAFI for having me here tonight. As John said, my name is Annetay Henderson-Sapir. I am the Chief Executive and Museum Director of the Adelaide Holocaust Museum. Can I say what an incredible honour it is to speak after Suzie. Suzie, I'd just like to acknowledge you and your story, and thank you so much for the work that you continue to do. It's absolutely inspiring. And I'd also like to acknowledge any other Holocaust survivors who may be online. Our story at the Adelaide Holocaust Museum is really encapsulated in 3 points. Tonight, I will share with you about compassion, education, and transformation. First, compassion. It's the foundation of what we do. The Adelaide Holocaust Museum and Andrew Steiner Centre is a museum of history with a contemporary mission. And that mission is to contribute to a fairer and more compassionate world by inspiring visitors to address anti-Semitism, racism, and other hate now. The museum and education centre are located in the centre of Adelaide. We're an independent, not-for-profit organisation funded primarily by donations with project-based support from state and federal government. The museum is South Australia's only publicly facing Jewish associated institution. We're the only organisation doing the sort of work that we do. We talk about compassion. You'll note I don't talk about tolerance. We want to move people well beyond tolerating others to being compassionate for others. In the words of our founder, Andrew Steiner, I was inspired to establish the museum to be a centre of compassion, a beacon of light pointing the way against darkness, using education as the tool to achieve a fairer, more just, and kinder world. And here you can see Andrew with a statue which he's created entitled Homage. This statue is dedicated to Dr. Janusz Korczak, who's sometimes referred to as the grandfather of children's rights, and to the 1.5 million innocent child victims of the Holocaust. Homage is one of a number of statues that Andrew has graciously donated to the museum. Andrew is still educating students almost on a weekly basis, and he is on our board. He's an extraordinary, extraordinary person. Compassion. Like other Holocaust museums worldwide, our museum has a sacred role in commemorating the lives of 6 million Jews and other innocents murdered by the Nazi regime and its collaborators. Our museum acts uniquely as a custodian of more than 450 South Australian Holocaust survivor stories. They're artifacts as well, documenting, exploring, and communicating the South Australian connections to the Holocaust. Our role is unique in ensuring that not only are we documenting and supporting survivors and their families, an important role in and of itself, but that element is also absolutely critical to our education and our curatorial philosophy. We are humanizing and bringing a personal connection for our students and our visitors through South Australian stories so that they can see themselves in the stories that they're hearing. And here you can see a picture of the family of one of our survivor educators, Eva Temple. Eva is one of the youngest Holocaust survivors in Australia and possibly the youngest survivor of the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. Eva was saved by her grandmother, and today she was sharing her story and her extraordinary journey with Year 9 students through our education program. So Eva continues to share that story of compassion that she experienced. Although we may be a young museum, we come from a long history of seeking to inspire compassion. I'd really like to acknowledge that. For almost 40 years, South Australian Holocaust survivors chose to volunteer their time through teaching about the lessons of the Holocaust in schools. The dream of those survivors was for this work to live on in South Australia, and it was realised when the Archdiocese of Adelaide very graciously offered a 3-storey historic building next to the Adelaide Cathedral on Wakefield Street, for those who are familiar with Adelaide, to be the long-term home of the Museum and Education Centre. We only half-jokingly call this a moment of divine intervention, and for which we are deeply grateful. The museum opened to the public in 2020, and we've just completed an extensive renovation of the museum building, as John's mentioned. The museum shares its message of compassion in 3 main ways. Firstly, we provide education for schools with a very popular education program for largely secondary students, and we also provide professional development for teachers. Secondly, we engage the general public through special programming, and before we closed due to the renovation as a museum open to the public. And thirdly, we maintain the custodianship of South Australian survivor stories, continuing to record, research, and preserve their histories. This work also places us as South Australia's centre of knowledge about anti-Semitism. Across these three streams of work, we work with other institutions in Australia with the Australian Museum Holocaust Alliance, Flinders University here locally, and internationally with Yad Vashem, the World Holocaust Remembrance Centre, and the US Memorial Holocaust Museum, amongst others. The Museum of History with a contemporary mission, and that mission is primarily achieved through education. And that's our flagship program. Our flagship program is our educational offerings, which as of last week are operating from the purpose-built Andrew Steiner Education Centre. I'm excited to say we saw our first student group last week and our second student group back in the new centre today. For the last almost 15 months, we have been operating in a hybrid way out at schools, online, and in temporary locations, but we are back in our home. The education program actively draws links from history to promote moral and ethical thought about current and future issues. We particularly focus on hate, racial profiling, and anti-Semitism. We educate about 3,000 students a year, with classes coming to us through the choice of individual teachers. They're not obligated to do so. And we often find that once teachers book with us, then they do return. The majority of our education participants are in year 10. That is where our introduction to the Holocaust program fits neatly in the curriculum. Though they in South Australia are not obligated to study the Holocaust, it is part of the curriculum, but it is not something that they must do here in South Australia. But the program does service years 8 through 12 at the moment, as well as pre-service teachers and other university students. We separately provide professional development for serving teachers to improve their own teaching in the classroom about the Holocaust and other values-based education and education about citizenship. We also provide professional development for corporate groups on request. The program is session-based, with sessions typically lasting up to 2 hours. And here is that glimpse of the Andrew Steiner Education Centre. This is a concept picture, but if you are based in South Australia, we would very much warmly welcome you at one of our public programs, which we've commenced in the Education Centre. Our education program is guided by core education principles. Our education team uses the Safely In, Safely Out approach developed by Yad Vashem. Yad Vashem has developed this approach to ensure students can engage with the Holocaust history sensitively and thoughtfully. This methodology helps us support students to have meaningful engagement with the lessons of history without undue distress, doing so in an age-appropriate way. And we use survivor testimonies as an entry point. Our educators work very hard to create personal relevance for student groups through South Australian connections. So for example, when our educators travelled to the regional town of Clare for education sessions, they came with stories about survivors that settled in Clare and what they had contributed to Clare. So that creates that personal connection, knowing that people who experienced the Holocaust, for example, had an association with a local school. Through the program, students are not passive recipients of information. The programs are structured so that students need to discover the material they need throughout a session. They're given prompts and questions. They're encouraged to find the information themselves. This isn't just a learning methodology. This is actually key to one of the principles that we're seeking for students to learn. We're asking them, and in fact, we're almost demanding of them in the way that the program is structured, that they have a right and an obligation to make decisions and have agency in the world. And closely related to this is the idea that our sessions aren't lectures. So even when with an educator or a survivor is in front of the class sharing a story, students are encouraged to engage. They respond and interact It's really quite key to be an active participant in our sessions. And this is key to us as well, asking them questions about morality and ethics so that they're engaging with the material for themselves now. I also feel compelled to say that our programs are committed to continuous improvement in the way that we educate. Our educators are continuously seeking feedback from students and teachers about the sessions so that we can tweak and improve what we do and how we do it. We're also part of a longitudinal study looking at the impact of Holocaust education across Australia. I've touched on the fact that we have a number of education streams tailored to what students are studying, but regardless of what the stream is that they're studying, our education sessions are values-based. The values are taught across all of our education streams: compassion, critical thinking, active citizenship, and creativity in particular. I mentioned previously our drive to engender compassion and how we seek to connect with visitors through personal connections in their own lives. So now I'll really focus in on the other three values of our education program. Our program invites critical thought. We're particularly interested in how an environment could be created to allow a devastating event like the Holocaust to transpire. Activities that our students participate in are to encourage them to develop the skills to process, evaluate, and respond to information. For example, programs may discuss propaganda and its impact, helping students develop the skills to understand how other forces may be seeking to modify and control their views. Depending on the education stream and the age of the students, they may be given examples of bystanders to bullying, harassment, and worse. And I do think it's important, I know Suzie touched on this, it's not only the worst end of the actions through the Holocaust, it's those early stages around bullying and harassment and allowing that to occur unchecked. And so for us, it's really important to pull that out for students to understand how they themselves now could find themselves in situations where they can stand up. We don't tell students what to think, but we do seek their feedback. When asked about one session, in the words of a Year 10 student, they said, and I quote, "Why is this important? It's important because everyone needs to know what happened and how easy it can be, relatively, to strip a group in society of their rights, including the most basic right of life." Another value in our program is of active citizenship. The program highlights real stories of upstanders to reinforce students' understanding of the power of one and to encourage them to choose to do the right thing now, including in difficult situations. Many of our stories involve young people standing up for what's right, from small acts of kindness. Again, it's important to highlight those smaller acts of kindness, to, in some cases, literally saving a life. And many of our survivors can focus in on people through their history who provided them with kindness and helped save them and their families. We also highlight stories demonstrating what is referred to in Hebrew as amidah, literally standing up, but sometimes translated as resistance. We think it's important to talk about this type of choosing agency and not standing by when someone sees behaviors and actions that they can't accept. As one of our students reported back last year, and again I quote, "The most meaningful lesson was that being a bystander helps the persecutors." And here we have a picture of a statue of William Cooper, a Yorta man who led a delegation to protest Nazi Germany's persecution of the Jewish people in 1938. This is one of many stories that we share in our program. And finally, our program values creativity. We're an organization founded by an artist, so creativity is in our DNA. The education program touches on creativity as a means of survival for some during the Holocaust and a way of processing the trauma of the events of the Holocaust. We're blessed to have a collection of artworks in our museum, including a number of works from our founder, Andrew Steiner and Franz Kempf, and we use these pieces as a means of educating about the Holocaust. One of our students summed up their experience in our education program by saying, being compassionate, creative, and loving can help you deal with trauma. We are a museum of history with a contemporary mission. That mission is about transformation, and our museum is in transformation. In the work we do, we are seeking to transform visitors, whether they're students or members of the public. Our work is consciously designed to help them identify hate when they see it and to see it early, and to help them know that they have agency to stand up against it. Our museum's been open for 5 years, and in those 5 years, the world that we live in and teach in has changed dramatically. We have not been immune to the rise in anti-Semitism here in South Australia. And like similar organisations worldwide, we're asking ourselves, what can we do better? How do we respond to the swell of anti-Semitism now? And with a renovated building, the museum has the opportunity to undergo its own transformation to meet these contemporary challenges. And so we're in a process of really redesigning all of our exhibitions. The transformed museum will connect events of the past to contemporary ideas and culture today. Visitors will be immersed in the experience, engaging multiple senses. The museum will continue to tell the stories that are so important to an emotional experience to inspire agency in our visitors. I'll take you through a quick virtual journey of what our new museum will look like when we do have it recurated. The first piece, and that is so critical to us, is a Korjak space, a space to engage younger visitors. Here we'll have a space for stories to come to life, not through words on the page, but the way young people interact with them. This will be a place for students to play, explore, and think deeply. The place will have small invitations to engage, books to activate, newspapers to rewrite, questions students can answer, ideas they can share. Everything in this space is being designed to help young people know that they have a voice. Importantly, this space is purposefully designed to help us expand our program to younger cohorts, primarily years 4 to 7. You wouldn't start teaching math in year 10, so talking about foundational values in year 10 and starting a conversation there doesn't make sense to us. We really want to, in an age-appropriate way, engage with younger cohorts. Very appropriate to talk about issues around fairness, fitting in, being different, and accepting and caring for others who are different. Our program is a museum-based education program, and our museum is seeking to create transformation in our new space through understanding. Students will begin their experience in the museum walking into an immersive space that replicates a European streetscape from before the Holocaust. In this space, through video, projection, and sound, they'll not only see, but they'll experience the diversity of Jewish life and practice as the streetscape evolves. This is by design. There's a growing concern that a driver of the rise of anti-Semitism is a lack of knowledge and continuing misunderstanding about Jews and Judaism. So this space is critical for us developing that basic knowledge about Jews and Judaism. In a second gallery, visitors and students will have the opportunity to sit in a late 1930s styled cafe and through projection and directional sound, hear from a South Australian survivor. This gallery creates that personal connection. And even if a student doesn't have the opportunity to hear from a survivor, then they'll hear their experiences through these pre-war Jewish life galleries. We're also seeking to transform the impact that we have. After the pre-war Jewish life exhibition, students and other visitors will go through Shoah galleries. These galleries are really to help us pull out the richness of the history of the Shoah through those 450 South Australian stories. Our previous museum was able to tell 6 stories. That's how many Holocaust survivors were well documented in South Australia when we started, and now we have this richness. And finally, the last gallery will focus on explicitly visitor transformation. One gallery is entitled We're Still Here. It's a reflection space, so students can and visitors can process what they've seen and heard, surrounded by pictures of South Australian survivors and their families. And they will also have a space where they receive prompts about what would you do in this situation? Is this anti-Semitism? What will you do with the lessons that you've learned here in the museum? This is like how we seek feedback from our student groups, but on a much larger scale, asking people to visibly commit to what they will do after they leave the museum. And so that is our museum in 3 points: a museum of history with a contemporary mission. In 3 words: compassion, education, and transformation. Our origins and our compassion. Our drive is to inspire compassion. We see education as a unique role to support addressing hate, particularly for students and teachers, but also the broader public. And finally, we have the ability for visitors' viewpoints to be transformed, and we ourselves are undergoing a transformation right now. If you'd like to connect with us, this link will lead you to all of our socials, and the bottom link is our website. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Annetay. Everybody's got that link there. Wonderful. You can stop sharing now, and that will go.
I'm trying. There we go. I found it. Thank you, John.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you. Look, fantastic. The innovative work that you are doing in Adelaide is just wonderful. I've enjoyed being there. Look forward to going back and seeing the finished product when I get back into Adelaide. Thank you, Mark Woodry, for introducing us to Annetay and the innovative ideas that they are doing, and that we want to help Annetay reproduce this in every major city throughout Australia, and to get our kids into finding this part of the education process, which unfortunately I was never a part of in Melbourne as a growing up kid. But we need to see and do whatever we can to get the education into your kids and grandkids, wherever they might be. So we're working towards that. And as part of that, you know, the Israel Allies Foundation, you know, that's why we're come together in a formal sense of a recognised tax-deductible entity, so that we can expand education throughout the country with and through, in particular, our political caucus members who support Israel. So where Suzie touched on, you know, what we currently sit under is not where we want to be. So we have to work towards getting the right people in front of Australians to help educate. And so the Israel Allies Caucus, which at the moment is led by Andrew Wallace, has some 35 members in the Australian Parliament, both upper and lower houses, and we're looking to expand that through state membership, so that we get introductions into state supporters of Israel, and then to their electorates, because in essence our political leaders have influence into the electorates, and we need to get into that space down to the ground rules. It was wonderful. Many of you were involved with Sunday NAIN. Never Again is now rallies throughout Australia. We had our first one down in Hobart, which I turned up to, and Marguerite was there as well, and a couple of other people. But throughout Australia, there was good support for the Never Again is now a movement. And if you are not don't know what's going on in your state, then I would encourage you to go to the Never Again Is Now website and join in so that you get notices of where your local meetings will be. So it's been a big year, a big month, and it will continue. So we just thank you all for your input, for your prayers. And, you know, I was fascinated with, although I didn't get to the Sukkot meeting in Melbourne with the rabbi, I would have loved to be there. But, you know, fascinating. He said he was envisaging hundreds of Jews, but there's hundreds of Christians here. So I was fascinated with all of that as well. So I invite you to, whether you're a Christian or Jew, to get to know your neighbour, to visit the local synagogue, to go to the local church and meet your, you know, Anglican. And again, I was fascinated, Annetay and Suzie, that both of you were supported by the Catholics. And I go, wow, God, you're amazing. what you can do. Thank you, Hashem, how you work. So on that note, I just want to say thank you to everybody tonight for being with us. Please unmute, give our guests a raising hand of applause and say good night to everybody.
Good night.
So, wonderful.
Good night.
Have you
Shalom,
with you.
shalom.
Greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Bless everyone.
Shalom. Good night. Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Good night. Good night.
Bye.
Well done, David.
Hey, thanks, Morris. Great to see you. Love your program.
Great clip of Peter in that
Yeah.
in that clip.
Yeah. Thank you.
Stay well.